All right, so chapter 30, plant diversity 2, the evolution of seed plants, right? Remember we said as plants evolved, the gametophyte became smaller and the sporophyte became more dominant, right? And we developed vascular tissue, xylem and phloem. Xylem carries X before X is W. Xylem carries water. Phloem carries food, glucose, which is C6H12O6. All right. Your seed is your embryo with the food supply and the protective coat. Like we said, it's almost like an egg, right? It also changes human society because we went from being nomadic to building societies and building what we needed to survive, getting our food in one area. Characteristic of seed plants, we've got the reduced gametophyte. You've got a heterospory where you have two types of sporangia. They're going to produce two types of spores. The megaspore is going to be the female, and the microspore is going to be the male. We've got ovules and pollens that are produced. We no longer need water for fertilization. We do not have a flagellated sperm. The sperm does not have the flagellum anymore, so not as dependent on water to reproduce. Advantages of a reduced gametophyte, mostly microscopic in seed plants, and the gametophyte is protected from environmental factors such as UV rays by being inside the sporophyte, and they're also getting nutrients from the sporophyte. So moist tissue sporophyte protects gametophyte from UV rays and gives them the nutrients. Ovules and production of eggs. We've got our seed plants that are very unique to keeping the megasporangium inside of the parent sporophyte. Your integument, that's your tissue that's around the megasporangium. And so this is inside of a female pine cone, right? Your male pine cones are the yellow powdery cones. Those are male because that powder is pollen, right? So all this yellow stuff we have everywhere, it is nothing but sperm that has been released by the pine trees everywhere. All right, you've got your angiosperm, megasporangia, which has these two eguments around them. Gymnosperms have one, your ovule, that's your megasporangium, your integument, and your megaspore all together. The microspore is the pollen grain. Inside of the pollen grain, you have the sperm, but you also have a pollen tube that allows, so sticky stigma, you've got the pollen tube that goes all the way down, and then the sperm is able to go down the pollen tube and fertilize the egg inside the ovary of your actual angiosperm. Pollination, the transfer of pollen to parts of the seed plant that contain the ovules. If the pollen grain actually germinates, it'll give rise to the pollen tube. Dispersal can be very, very, very far. And again, the sperm does not have a flagellum. In seed plants, the embryo is already multicellular. It gives a longer lifespan in the seeds than the spore, and the seeds have a very definitive food supply inside of them, give them a better chance to survive. Greater dispersal with seeds as well. So this is a papaya with all of its seeds. I really want you looking at fruits now, and even your vegetables, because remember, some of your vegetables have seeds in them or around them. That means that they are technically a fruit, right? And I really want you to look at it and think about it, okay? So we've got spores right here. That's what your mosses and ferns are going to produce. They are diploid, same with seeds. It is also diploid. We've got a single-celled embryo versus a multicellular in our more advanced plants. No food supply in the mosses and ferns. A definite food supply in your seeds and your more advanced plants. No protective coat. That means desiccation is a problem. The drying out is definitely a problem. Whereas seeds have a protective coat around them so they don't dry out. Your gymnosperm seeds are exposed on these modified leaves called sporophylls. And these are usually from the cones probili. All right, angiosperm seeds are enclosed inside of a fruit. So because that fruit, right, it's the ovary, the fertilized egg is inside right here. So this is what becomes your fruit. So your ovary becomes the fruit. So your fruit is a mature egg, is a mature ovary, sorry. Gymnosperm evolution happened about 305 million years ago from the Carboniferous to the Permian periods. And there's lots of gymnosperm diversity. Here we've got sequoias, we've got ginkgo biloba, which is great for helping with your mind and strengthening it. I might be adding it to my regimen in the mornings. You've got your cycads and welwitchias. I love that name. I think it's so cute. All right, the pine tree, your sporophyte. That's what we see. That's the diploid multicellular organism. They've got small pollen cones. These are these right here, right? And if you flick, whoop, by the time we find most of the pollen cone, it's actually brown and dried out because the pollen's already left it. And we've got large ovulate cones, so the pollen falls inside each one of these little, so we're talking about pine cone, inside each one of these little branches almost like, and at the very base of it is an egg. It goes down, fertilizes. It can take 3 years for the gametophyte to be produced. When the environment is suitable, then the seeds will get released. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, if this pine tree had brush around it, about shoulder height, which is what some of our forests have around us, right? That brush would prevent any seedlings from surviving and being able to reproduce. So because of that, these pine trees will actually stay shut until this waxy covering on the outside gets burned off from, for example, a forest fire. It comes through, kills off all the underbrush. Then they pop open and release all their little helicopters, right? Basically the wing with the seed at the base of it, the seed of a pine tree, and all it comes falling down, and now they're able to produce a seedling and take off because there's no competition around them to get to the sun, because if they can't get to the sun, they're not going to make it. Your angiosperms, your flowering plants, refers to seeds that are contained in fruits. Most diverse and widespread of all plants, more than 250,000, so basically 90% of all plant species we've identified, are angiosperms. So one of the characteristics of angiosperms is the flowers. These are called sepals. They are the specialized leaves that protect the flower until it's sexually mature. So think of like a rose that hasn't opened yet. It's got those green leaves on the outside. When the rose opens, they turn brown. We've got the petals to look pretty, right? To attract the pollinators. Then you have the stamen. You know it's the male part because it's got the word men in it, stamen. And then you've got the carpel, and these are the female parts. If you remember this from high school bio, you probably learned that this was called a pistil, and you're right. And it's made up of the sticky stigma, the style, because women like to be in style, and the ovary. But all three together, they are called the pistil or the carpel. For my purposes, it'll be the carpel, okay? And then this is the anther and the filament, who together make the actual stamen. So you want to make sure you know from outside in, it's sepal, petal, stamen, pistil. S-P-S, sorry. Yep, S-P-S-C, carpel, my apologies. So sepal, petal, stamen, carpel, S-P-S-C, all right? The fruits consist of your mature ovary. The ovary wall will actually thicken when fertilization occurs, and it actually helps with dispersal, because if anything comes and eats it, it's gonna poop the seeds further away from the mama plant. Mama plant does not want her babies at her feet because they're gonna not get any sunlight, they're not gonna get any water, they're not gonna get any nutrients because she's already got an awesome root system. So we need that dispersal. That's why so many plant species are actually angiosperms, because it is an amazing way to reproduce and survive. Your fleshy fruits, your tomatoes, your plum, your grapes, we've got a video for you to watch. And then of course you got your dry fruits, your beans, your nuts, your grains. Go check out what a cashew actually looks like in a tree. It is hilarious. Your embryo sac are a few cells, one of which is the egg, but most will actually do cross-pollination between two plants. You do have something called dioecious plants. These are the ones where you need a male tree and a female tree, so your avocados, your mangoes will do this. And so you don't have both parts, male and female parts, on one tree. You actually have to have two separate trees. Double fertilization occurs with these guys. You're gonna have two sperm cells, one that's gonna go in and fertilize the egg. One sperm will go and fertilize the egg, and then the second sperm will go and bond with the material around it and form the endosperm, and this actually becomes triploid. So haploid is N, diploid is 2N, triploid is 3N, and that's what we call double fertilization. All right? Codlings, that's what comes out when a seed germinates. That first leaf that comes out is a codling. If it's one leaf, it is called a monocot. If it has two leaves when it first germinates, it is called a dicot, technically a eudicot. Monocots, these are species with one codling, that first leaf. They've got parallel lines, fibrous root system, so when you pull it out, they look like a bunch of little hairs, no real rhyme or reason to it. And the petals are usually multiples of 3. Your dicots are species with two codlings. They've got these net-like veins, so if you look at the leaves, they're kind of going like a net versus nice straight parallel lines. They've got a tap root, that means they have a main root with root hairs on the other side. and the petals are usually multiples of 4 or 5. And that's just showing you the differences we just talked about with a nice little video. And just kind of remind you that seed plants are super helpful to us because they give us food and medicine. And unfortunately, we're losing a lot of species of plants because of, again, habitat destruction. And that's just some of the different medicines that we take and their actual sources. And that's it.